We can take these two middle ones.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Josh Constine, and today we're going to be talking about the future of creativity. We have one of the most incredible founders of a company, Luma AI, that is revolutionizing the way that people generate video, both as a consumer app and as an API. And we have Caroline here, the COO, and she was actually previously one of the leaders of Tokaboka, one of the most popular apps in the world for children. I think there's doing hundreds of millions in revenue. And it does feel like there's this through line from finding how you implement and sort of activate childhood wonder and that sense of curiosity into what you're building now. So I figured we'd just start with an easy question. Philosophically, how does humanity adapt to the fact that we cannot believe what we see anymore? Just real simple, just to start off.
Philosophically, how does it's a big question. I mean, I think that, okay, so I have two kids, and my 9-year-old, I was looking in a magazine the other day. I love magazines still, so I was looking, and she's next to me, and she's like, "Mom, that's not AI." And I was like, "No, it's not." And then we continue. She's like, "I think that is AI." Whether or not that is AI or not AI, her mind is thinking. There's a generation, I don't teach them about AI or not AI. Either YouTube or their teachers are doing this, but it's that concept is already taking shape in the next generation. I think that I would like visual AI to get so good so that it feels real. I think because that opens up for storytelling. That is really interesting. It opens up for play and games and interactions that are really interesting.
Yeah, it feels like, when I went to school a long time ago, it was oh, you have to learn how to use Google and Wikipedia, and now it feels like we need AI literacy classes just to help people understand not only how to use these tools, but also how to protect themselves from misuse of these kind of tools. And that kind of gets to my deeper question. We have a tendency to understand, if you write something, maybe it's not true on the other side. And yes, of course, there were special effects and big Hollywood studios that could make a dragon in Game of Thrones look like it's real. But generally, if you saw something in video, you assumed it was a real thing. And especially as we get closer and closer to perfect photorealism, that ability to detect that difference dissolves. So what does that do to human beings? How do we adapt and change our own behavior? Do we need to sort of verify everything and just assume a level of skepticism that we don't right now? And what are the kind of maybe positive impacts of that as well as the negative ones?
I think it would be really sad if we need to become more and more and more skeptical. Maybe we do. I think the positive side of what you're talking about is around only Hollywood studios having access to the level of making dragons. Mm-hmm. And now this, I don't know if democratization is the right thing, but it's really about permission. There are so many stories, there are literally drawers of stories that are not being told. That are great stories that would be fantastic if they could be told with video. They're just not being told because they cost millions and millions and millions of dollars to make. But if they cost less, or if more people had access to tell those stories, then us as consumers, and I love stories, we could actually enjoy more stories. And there are less, I think, gatekeepers sitting and deciding this story and this story. And yeah, then there's going to be stories that are maybe not in this drawer of great stories that are being told, that are in a drawer of not great stories that are being told. But then it leaves up to us consumers to decide what we prefer to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like video is the most natural way for us to storytell. It's the closest to what our own perception and interaction with the real universe is like. And historically, to be able to make great video, you either made something super scrappy on your phone, or you needed to raise a ton of money, hire a huge team, manage sets and storyboards, and do all these different pieces of the process, which meant that it was kind of compounding the skills that you needed. You couldn't just be good at videography or coming up with a beautiful idea, sort of similar to 100 years ago, you could just be good at playing guitar, and that's what it meant to be a musician. Then you had to be a good actor for MTV and look good on the Ed Sullivan Show. Now you have to be an incredible data scientist and merch designer and everyone's friend. It feels like now, but in video, it's almost going the opposite direction, where you used to have to do everything, and now finally you can do fewer and fewer things, which hopefully unlocks new types of storytellers. Which brings me to the question of sort of how does the nature of creativity change when this happens? What skills are more relevant, and how does that change the way that we interact with the world and the media we consume?
So I think it's like, if I go back to like what now feels like a really long time ago, when I joined Luma, which is less than a year ago.
So 1,000 years ago in AI time.
1,000 years ago in AI time. We launched Dream Machine, which is our, now we call the video model Ray, but Dream Machine was like our cluster for product and video and everything that we did. And that was the first like widely accessible video model out there. And it was like millions of people found it immediately, which was fantastic. But then it was like, what could you then do? And it was like, explode. Like you could make video, and that was the big thing. But after like, I don't know, 500 to 10,000 videos of explosions, it's like, okay, this was cool, but like, now what? And then during last fall, we started seeing like more and more storytellers, advertisers, filmmakers. They were trying to tell stories, but the way that they would do this would be like, okay, I now have a story about a girl that is walking from her mom to her grandmother through the forest, and somewhere in the middle she meets this wolf that eats people. And so if I'm now a creator and I want to use Dream Machine or any other tool to tell this story, I will start generating thousands of videos. And back in the fall, they just were not good enough. So then as a storyteller, you needed to start making all these shortcuts. So like the mother was not a mother, she was like, I know, a raccoon, and the wolf was a snake, and the girl was a bear, and like somewhere in the middle when you start like in this like slot machine of things happening, it's like there was some kind of story here, but now there's like animals in the forest and they're running around. So there was like really good efforts of telling a story, but the stories were like kind of watchable. Like they were more interesting than the explosions in the first era, but they were still not stories. Now what we're seeing is like, we're seeing stories. And I think that the big reason is like the models are getting better, but there's more people using video AI, and that means that more talent is using it. The models are getting better, and image to video is getting really good, and that is fantastic because storyboarding is like a traditional way of telling story, and this old saying of, I don't know what is exactly in English, like one image carries more than 1,000 words. Like that is true in the interaction between image and video in the AI land as well. So stories are getting better. And I think that that is like a really big part of the future of visual AI.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like previously in a lot of artistic creation and craft in general, there was this concept of measure twice, cut once. You want to make sure you know exactly what you're doing before you do anything. It feels like we flipped that on its head now. Now it's generate 1,000 times, publish once. Where instead of trying to say, oh, we need to know perfectly what we're doing before we even start, we can just bias towards action and learn from what comes out of it. And maybe the story changes in reaction to what you find the generative video gives back to you. And I think this relates back to a larger concept of what does AI do to us and how does it change creativity. Previously we were always the creators, and I think now we are the curators, and we've moved from being the question answerers to being the question askers. And so it's not about what can you make and how hard can you execute and all your hustle, as much as it is, do you know the right question to ask? And can you do enough iterations that you get to asking even better questions over time?
Yeah, and I think it is like, do you have a good story to tell? Because I do think that is like very human. And then it's about the ability of like, what tools, how quickly can you adapt, and how can you translate your story through these new tools?
Yeah, finally we're like learning the language. I mean, you remember the early days of the App Store when it was like, oh, cool, like lightsaber app, or it looks like I'm drinking a beer, and that was the best we could come up with. And then a few years later, we got like Uber and Instagram and
Yes.
real apps that took advantage of this. And it feels
For
like
sure.
we're kind of learning the language. Meanwhile, the models are getting better. You know, one of our consumer video investments at SignalFire called NIM Video, you know, they were doing well until suddenly the models got way better in December and growth just exploded through the roof. And now it's such an easy way for anybody to be able to make faithfully, put in a prompt, get something that is accurate to the prompt and actually just looks good. But that kind of brings me to another question, which is, you're both building a sort of consumer product with Dream Machine as well as an API. That seems like very ambitious, maybe a split focus, which a lot of investors don't love. Like, how did you come to the choice to do that, and what advice would you give to other founders in the audience trying to think about, should I make just purely you know, an enterprise product or API version, or can I build a consumer version which is almost acts like a front door, which helps me grow my top of funnel for potentially monetizing through the enterprise business?
So I think today where we are at as Luma as a company, we're very much, I wouldn't say like a broad consumer product. That is mostly because the technology isn't there. I think when as the models get better, there's going to be an explosion of consumer products built on top of video models. So we focus on creative professionals. And for what that means is like, some of them, they want to access through a product like Dream Machine. Some of them, like VFX artists, like they're very technical. They want an API. Mm-hmm. This also means that we are selling our... We could choose not to do that, but we have decided as a company to say like, no, it's better that we do that and we see that and we make our product standalone so good so that they survive regardless. And I think that has served us well so far. But it does require a lot of intentionality and a lot of focus on where you do what.
It's kind of curious because when I think of professionals, you think of maybe they want even better quality. Like they're not comfortable with a little rough edge if they're actually going to be publishing this, putting it on TV, making ads out of it. On the other end, maybe you think that they are more willing to endure friction because they get paid for this. This isn't just a fun hobby like a consumer. Consumers, I historically think of as like, if it's frictionful, we just won't use it, versus an enterprise will kind of throw bodies and budget at a problem until they solve it. And so, yeah, I'm always fascinated. It's like, are the models not being good enough already? Is that better for consumer versus better for enterprise? Because I think a lot of companies out there are wondering, hey, if the models still feel like they're just on the cusp of being good enough to do this, what market should I be focused on? Mid-market, top of market? Should I be going down for like SMBs and creators, prosumers?
I mean, I think anyone, being it as say like on the prosumer side to a large enterprise side, anyone who is paying us today, they're getting value. I think that's sort of like, and when they don't, they don't. but it's how the platforms that the content is sort of, that the stories are told varies a lot. We see some of like, I think there's some large studios, some large advertisers that have publicly shared work that they've done. And that is really exciting, but that has required them to be super curious, to like spend a lot of time to understand the new technology. And what I'm seeing that is interesting is this new careers being born on the prosumer side that are then connecting with the enterprises. So now we have AI creators that are, and maybe some of you are here in the audience, but that are like, they came in and they started using the prosumer side for two different reasons, like two different sort of personas. One was people that they were working as designers, as creative directors, as VFX artists, and they were like, this is new technology, I've always been an early adopter, I'm gonna try this out. Or they were people that always wanted to be in this first group, but for various reasons, they never ended up there. And they said, whoa, here's a new technology, maybe I can become that thing that I wanted to be. And the awesome thing is that like, I see people in both of these groups being very successful. I also have like multiple sunshine stories popping up every week of people in the second group that are now getting to like have the career that they always wanted through these tools. And so that's really like, I see them either joining the big enterprises or creating their completely new IPs for what
say, oh, my sunk cost doesn't matter, I just want to get great at this tool, suddenly you can get so good so quickly that you can go from it being a hobby to it turning into your career in a way that previously you were going to have to dig your way out of competing with people who've been videographers for 50 years. And so finally, do you have a request for startup? Like, other than just making traditional creative stuff or competing tools, what do you hope people do with these APIs, now that we're finally at the point where the infrastructure is good enough to make new, amazing things? What do you want to see people build with new generative video stuff?
So, this is maybe like a non-answer I'm going to give, because I could say, it's so interesting to look at the gaming side and all, and there are a lot of, very interesting, if I look at anywhere where video exists today, all of that is going to be more and going to be better. But if I look back at all of the historical, technological shifts, what excites me the most is the thing that we do not know. We had no idea that it would be interesting to sit and watch other everyday people blow their hairs on YouTube. That was not a thing that anyone would have said I think that's what's gonna happen when YouTube comes. We had no idea, and that ended up being one of the early things they saw at YouTube that people were interested in, A, doing, which was really weird, and B, watching, which was equally weird. That is exciting with this new space. What's gonna be built? I actually don't really know, but that excites me. I haven't seen that yet, though, I would say. I've seen a lot of these people are gonna need this, and these people are gonna need this, and these people are gonna need this, but something weird and exciting is gonna happen.
I love that. So just to quickly recap, we talked about that these new tools give everyone the permission to create, and there's so many untold stories out there that can finally be unlocked. And maybe instead of thinking of being a perfectionist and measuring twice and cutting once, you generate 1,000 times and publish once. And this tech isn't just for consumers, and instead it's unlocking careers for people who maybe previously had this latent creativity. And even if you think that your product isn't good enough, that the AI isn't there yet, you can build for the enterprise, because as long as they're getting real value out of it, they will endure the friction and they will wait for the models to get better for you. And to me, I think the most exciting thing is when you suddenly allow such a huge number of people to interact with a type of creativity that is so natural to us, our own visual perception of the world, that the truly weird and wild things are just on the horizon. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. And thank you everyone here at AI Rabbit Hole. Thank you.
Thank you.